Okay, in today's interview, we have the one and only Mr. Doug Casey, one of the most well-known and successful commodities investors, gold and silver speculators, and now a very interesting author as well. He's got a series of very interesting fictional books. They're also great on audio too. So I'll put the link to all those right there down below. He's got Speculator, he's got Assassin, a lot of great ones, and someone that I find myself thinking more and more and more alike. And so really appreciate Doug. Just want to say real quick, please make sure you hit the like button on the right side, the left side. I'll put the link to International Man. It's actually a really good newsletter. I was telling Doug before, I actually read every single one. And so we'll have the link to all Doug's stuff. Just a quick shout out to our channel sponsor, Vizsla Resources, one of my favorite silver stocks. So thank you, Vizsla. And welcome, Doug.
Thanks, Jake. It's nice to be with you, although remotely. I am at my farm in Uruguay near Punta del Este at the moment.
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to be in person in a couple months when I make it down there. So,
well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. Absolutely, you'll like it down here. It's a backward but mellow little country.
Right. So, okay, let me start here, Doug. So give me your assessment of what's happening right now in the world and what you foresee coming.
Well, I hate to be a bear. Nobody likes a negative Nelly. Nobody likes a gloomy Gus. Nobody likes nothing but gloom and doom. But I don't see any way out of this. It's like this print I've got over my shoulder. You got a couple of ducks that have painted themselves into a corner with red ink. And that's pretty much where the West in general is right now. I think that we're entering upon the second stage of what I call the Greater Depression. I call it that because it's going to be much worse and much different and much longer lasting than the unpleasantness of 1929 to 1946. So hang on to your hats and prepare for it. I don't see any way out of it at this point. I didn't see any way out of it, for years, looking at it from a long-term historical point of view, actually, starting with the creation of a central bank in the US and the income tax and increasing numbers of regulation and foreign wars. I mean, look, we're on an accelerated basis. We're following the path of the Roman Empire. And we're just at the point where the barbarians are about to break down the door and invade. So anyway, that's kind of my overview. I hate to put anybody off, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, you've kind of had this unique viewpoint amongst a lot of your colleagues. I guess some people would call, you and I extreme in our views of what we think are going to happen. And you've had this view for a very long time. Now, let me ask you, what do you think America is going to look like in 5 years, in 10 years? Where do you think it's headed?
Well, I've said we're going to have the Greater Depression. It makes sense to define the word depression. It's a period of time when most people's standard of living drops significantly. And one indication of that is all of the debt that we have in the US. All the federal government's debt, slightly different thing. But the average guy today, it's said, can't lay his hands on $500 if he needs it. He just doesn't have any cash. A lot of people's credit cards are up to the max. A lot of people don't even have cars. Well, they have cars, but give you an idea. Look, back when I was in my 20s, if you wanted a car, you paid cash. You saved up and you paid cash. I hate to tell these things. I hate to tell stories that sound like, yeah, I had to walk to school and it was uphill both ways. Snowstorms, it wasn't like that. But if you wanted a car, you paid cash. And then it turned out you could get 2-year financing, then 3-year financing, 4-year, and then they got up to 7-year financing with cars that cost what houses used to cost. And now people lease their cars. So a car turns from a minor asset that you own to a major liability that you never own. And this is pretty much what the whole country is like today. If people have any assets, it's because their houses have gone up in value. And I question whether that's even going to end, because right now interest rates, well, the whole country runs on debt. The problem with debt is that, I mean, nothing wrong with debt in itself if you use it to create more wealth. Borrow $100, set up a business, pay the $100 back, you got a business left. Okay, fine. That's one thing. That's business debt. I'm talking about consumer debt, which the US is awash in. And when you have debt, it means you're living out of the future. And there's two ways that debt can be financed. Either borrowing capital that others have saved in the past, or mortgaging your future, where you promise to pay it. Those are the two ways, but it's consumer debt, not debt used to create more businesses. So what could happen? We could have a credit collapse where if the Federal Reserve doesn't print up enough money fast enough, a lot of people just can't pay their mortgage, can't pay their car lease, can't pay their credit cards, can't pay their other debts, lose their jobs. A lot of people have done that, 30 million, with this COVID hysteria. And of course, I'm hysteria because I think it's vastly overblown, vastly overblown. But so we could have a credit collapse where for a short period of time, the dollar becomes worth more because there are less of them. I mean, if a $1 billion bond that some company issues defaults, where'd the $1 billion go? It died and went to money heaven, basically. It disappeared. And if the company collapses, its stock market capitalization basically goes to zero too. People find they thought they had assets, they're not there anymore. So we could have a credit collapse type deflation, or what looks more likely at the moment is the Federal Reserve printing up another $2 trillion that the government is going to pass out to its subjects. Like it's like we're paupers at the side of the road and they're tossing candy out to us. It's actually comical, but it's disgusting too. So that at some point soon, we're going to see rapidly increasing prices, not just in the financial markets. That's where all this money has gone so far, into the financial markets, but it's going to go into the regular consumer markets, both because of more money bidding for it, and I think less supply of goodies too. So this is a real witch's brew. That's it in a nutshell, Jake. I mean, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, so we're in the same camp. So let me ask you, what about this idea of this reset, right? You've got the Davos crowd and the World Economic Forum, and they're all talking about this reset idea, whether you call it a currency reset, whether, they talk about a reset and, using the same measures as quote unquote COVID to now parlay it into global warming to lock you in your house again. What do you think about this whole idea of this reset? And do you think that's a real thing that these psychopaths are trying to implement?
Yeah, I actually do. I mean, these people they're really power mad. And I wonder if when I live in North America, which I do during the northern summer, it's generally in Aspen, Colorado. And in the past, during the winter, and I try not to be there during the winter, but the ski slopes were getting pretty crowded. This year, they're not crowded at all. I mean, maybe these guys in Davos like it that way. They don't like going to Venice and having thousands of hoi polloi in San Marco Square, obscuring their view and taking all the seats in the restaurant. They want the peasants to stay at home, which they pretty much are right now, and just enough of them come out to serve them food. So I think the fact the whole world is locked down is actually kind of convenient for guys that have a lot of money. You take your private jet someplace, you don't have to mess with crowded airports, don't have to mess with crowded customs and immigration going through because nobody else is traveling. They like it that way, I think. So I expect we'll see more of that. And after this round of COVID hysteria blows over, and as I'm sure you're well aware, it is a total non-problem. It is no more of a danger than the annual flu, the seasonal flu, for people that are under 50. And it's only a danger for people that are over 65. That's where all the casualties are. But they never mention that. They never mention that. It's not an excuse to lock down the whole economy. So I don't know, but it is a reset. They're changing. This is changing the whole nature of life as much as I wasn't there, but it seems like as much as World War II changed the whole nature of life. Because after this round of the COVID hysteria blows over, I suspect we're going to have another round. They're talking about mutations of the virus coming from England, coming from South Africa, coming from here and there. And that means that you're going to have to wear masks for longer, which do absolutely no good, as far as I can tell. You're going to have to socially distance for longer, which doesn't do any good. Look, it's a virus. Viruses spread, and then they burn themselves out. But the policies these idiots are adopting, if anything, is going to keep this going longer. And then after this COVID virus, there'll be something else, because it is a great scam to impose power on the rest of the world. I mean, the average idiot out there actually believes this stuff, and has changed his whole life to orient around the virus. They're actually afraid of it, and it's changing the world. And the longer it goes on, the more ingrained it's going to be with the average chimpanzee out there. So my prognosis is not good. I've been a bear for a long time because I started reading economics early, and I started reading history early. And I say these things even while I'm a tremendous technophile. I actually believe that Ray Kurzweil should be right when he talks about the singularity. And if you can hang on for another 25 years, the whole nature of life will change, but for the better. Magic will happen with nanotechnology and robotics and artificial intelligence, which is all accelerating at a rate greater than Moore's law in some areas. So look, we're looking at the best of times and the worst of times. And at this time, I just watch it all on my widescreen. And when I turn on the news, we get the news here in Uruguay, I always think I ought to turn off the stupid talking head who's blathering at me while I watch whatever's going on, and just fire up the Rolling Stones' Street Fighting Man and play it on continuous loop. Because that's what it's going to be like when the natives really start getting restless. Probably this summer, coming northern summer. Who knows? This is terra incognita we're looking at.
Yeah, no, I fall in your camp. I mean, as I told you off air, I feel grateful that spur of the moment we decided to move to Utah last year, southern Utah specifically, because I don't know one person who's lost their job here. Not one. No business has been shut down. I go to the gym every single morning. I never wear a mask. Everyone's pretty normal. No one's hysterical. But more importantly, just people haven't lost their jobs. So I am grateful for that. But I think that the pressures, from these outside forces are going to take over some of these places, which is why I feel a strong pull to get out of the country. Do you think that there's an organizational component to this? Like there are people that believe that essentially there are individuals that want a one world technocratic government or basically a serf system. Do you believe that, or do you think it's a disorganized movement of psychopaths that basically just care about control, or do you think that there's an agenda to it?
Well, I don't believe in conspiracies per se. Why? Because it's hard enough to get a half a dozen buddies to decide what they're going to do for an evening, what movie to see, what restaurant to go to. That's pretty hard. But when you're dealing with hundreds of genuine dyed-in-the-wool psychopaths who not only hate the rest of humanity, but probably hate themselves, it's pretty hard to get them to collude. That's on the one hand. But on the other hand, these people have a certain view of the world that they share, and birds of a feather do, in fact, flock together. You got two kinds of people in the world. You got people that like to deal in physical reality, the material world, stuff out there, fields and farms and factories, and build them and make them work. I like those kind of people. And then you got people that like to control other people. That's how they're oriented. And that's who these people are. That's who these criminals that are in Washington, D.C., trying to control the country and control the world are. That's who the same idiots are in Brussels and for Europe and every other country in the world. You don't get the best and the brightest that go into government. You get the most dangerous and most criminal type of personalities, in fact. So yeah, I'm afraid. And they all think alike, and they like to get together because you like to be around people that kind of think the way you do. And so yeah, it's something to be afraid of.
Quick question, just a yes or no. I know you got your place in Aspen, which I believe you said you sold. Are you intending to visit America for the winters as you used to do, or are you out and done until things blow over and you're gonna stay in Uruguay?
Look, I wasn't a fan of Trump, except insofar as he represented cultural conservatism in the U.S. He liked American values. He liked the things that America was supposed to stand for. A lot of his policies were idiotic, like printing money up by the ton and so forth. But I don't want to get into that, whether orange man bad or orange man good. It's academic at this point. I'll tell you that these people that are in the Biden administration are genuine criminal personalities, and they're really dangerous. And they've said, and they believe they want to change the nature of America. They want to change America, which is an idea, not just a place. The United States is just a place. But and it's turned into a multicultural domestic empire over the years. It's not what it used to be at all. At all. It's changed radically from where it was 50 years ago. I know things always change. That's correct. But this is the idea of America has actually changed. So I'm afraid that the Biden regime, it's the Harris Regency, and she is one dangerous chick. When she becomes president, and the Democrats, like all Bolsheviks, once they get power, and they have power, they've got both houses of Congress, they've got the executive branch, they'll fill the bureaucracy with their people, they're going to pack the Supreme Court, they're not going to give it up. So these people that talk about, yeah, we'll get them in the next election, and elections are bullshit anyway. I mean, we could talk about that, but they're not going to go away. So this is really serious. And am I going to go back to the U.S.? Well, I don't know. Look, the U.S. is a pleasant place. Everything still works. You got Walmarts and Costco's and Starbucks and all this kind of great shit. So it's very convenient, okay? It's nice. And I might go back now that I've sold the ranch in Aspen, because when the ducks are quacking, you want to feed them. And I don't like where Aspen's going either. It's the billionaires are driving the millionaires down valley. It's absolutely insane. It's like class warfare, where half the people live in welfare housing, and the other half live in 25,000 square foot mega palaces. So it's not for me anymore. I went to Aspen when it was the land of soft snow, hard drugs, and casual sex. So things change. Everything changes. It's the nature of life. But am I going to come back to the U.S.? Yeah, I might buy something someplace just to have a tail of the skink, a place to store my stuff that's still in the U.S. But look, the world should be your oyster. There's about 200 political entities in the U.S. You got all kinds of varieties of climate and people, and so it's a problem for Americans. They think that the whole world begins and ends at the borders, and it doesn't. They got to get out a little bit more.
So, all of this being so, and you and I think a lot alike on what the future looks like and where we're at right now. And for me personally, this is what led me to, first of all, to my gold and silver bullion. And before that, even, this is what led me to start my own businesses. But then to gold and silver bullion, and then, building a position in more speculative in my mining stocks, both gold, silver, uranium, and some other commodities. Let's talk a little bit about why you wrote your book, Speculator, and let's talk about it as it pertains to right now in the world for someone listening. Why you think it's an important part of your portfolio, and where you think this is all headed in terms of commodities and metals and such. Then we get a little bit more into specifics of gold and silver.
Well, I guess I'm best known for having written a book called Crisis Investing, Your Profits and Opportunities in the Coming Great Depression. And I wrote that book in 1978. It was published in 79. And a lot of your listeners won't recall, or may not even be aware, that back then, interest rates that the government was paying went up to 15%.
Wow.
It was incredible. And if you wanted a second on your house, you were paying 18%.
Oh,
credit card rates for a second on your house. True, this is in the early 80s, okay? The stock market was in the toilet. Bonds were in the toilet. It was a scary time, and it was a good book for its time. Okay, so that's where I started writing books. And I've written several since then. They're all very good. Incidentally, they're all out of print. That's what happens to financial books. But they're very well worthwhile reading again because of the cyclical nature of the economy. However, I've gotten into the habit now of writing novels because there are things you can say in fiction that you best not say, or even dare not say in today's environment in nonfiction. So I want to urge your listeners to get these damn novels, because I've said there's a lot to be said in it. This is the last one, Assassin. The first one was Speculator, where our hero, Charles Knight, at age 23, gets lucky with a mining stock. Gets lucky. Didn't know much about it. I mean, he was always a self-taught geologist, among other things. He got lucky with the right Canadian mining stock. He makes himself $1 million from $10,000, which he'd saved. Big money. Decides to go to Africa to check it out, and finds that it's a fraud. Most of these mining stocks are crap, incidentally, but that's a whole different story. Gets involved in a bush war with boy soldiers and so forth. But one way or another, he turns his million into 200 million, then has it stolen by the government. Anyway, Speculator is a book about speculating. It's about Africa. It's about that type of thing. And he sails around the world for 7 years, uh, with money that the government didn't steal from him. And he becomes a drug lord in book number 2, both legal drugs and illegal drugs. And it's very interesting, that book, talking about the drug business, because in a different age, I almost got into the drug business myself. And I don't mean working for Pfizer. But so anyway.
So do you think that right now, if you take the speculator book and then you apply it to real life right now, obviously turning 10,000 into 200 million might be a little out of the picture. But do you believe that? Do you still believe that speculating specifically in mining stocks, that it still has this asymmetrical risk to reward, even though we haven't seen any movement in gold and silver whatsoever?
Yes, that is exactly when you want to get into these things. Unfortunately, the average person is only going to get into them when he reads about them in the papers and sees it on TV, and it's all over the internet. The money that, look, mining stocks are the most volatile class of securities on the face of the planet. They're more volatile than tech stocks, much more volatile. And right now, they're still really, really cheap. Relative to the stock market as a whole, mining stocks are about their cheapest in history. And I've been playing with them for 40 years. I'm very familiar with all kinds of stocks that have gone not just 10 to 1, but 100 to 1. I personally own 2. I'm not lying. You can check the charts that went 1,000 for 1. I'm not talking over the course of a lifetime, like buying Berkshire Hathaway. I'm talking about in the course of a mining cycle, 5 years. They happen to have been Bre-X, which was the biggest fraud in the world in mining history, and Diamond Fields, which went from a quarter. I bought it with a full warrant and a private placement, and it later hit, I think it hit $240.
Oh my goodness.
So if you count the warrant, it was more than 1,000 for 1. Now, you don't hold these things. You don't buy. I bought it at the bottom, but nobody sells at the top except liars. But they were very, very good to me. It'll happen again because I think we're in for a final run in gold and silver because they're really going to destroy the currency this time. And they've been creating bubbles. They created bubbles in the housing business, and that broke. And there's a hyper bubble in bonds and bubbles in internet stocks. And it's one thing after another. So the biggest bubble, or at least I hope this is from my mouth to God's ears, is that when people get worried about inflation, which they're going to look to gold and silver, and they're going to look to these crappy little mining stocks, which they're not just micro caps, they're not even nano caps, they're pico caps, they're so small. And when the public gets interested in them and they won't know what they're doing, they'll just buy names and hot stocks. These things are going to just howl. I've seen it happen before, and then they lose. They go up 10 times as a group. The whole sector goes up, and then it goes down 95%. They lose more than they gain because, most of these companies don't make money. They just burn money in overhead and drilling expenses, and most of the time they don't make it. So it's a risky area. But right now, the risk-reward ratio is grossly in your favor. I could be wrong. I'm heavily invested in these things, very heavily. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So I'm long. I'm going to stay long until I see Slime magazine, if it still exists, with the picture of a golden bear tearing apart the New York Stock Exchange on its front cover, which is, I don't even know if they're in print anymore. I know they're still on the internet.
So then let me ask you, do you, there's a lot of people complaining that gold and silver haven't moved and all the macro favors a price rise in gold and silver, yet we haven't have it. So one, that doesn't concern you? And two, why do you think that hasn't happened? And three, what's it going to take to start to move?
Well, look, as we speak, gold is what? I don't know what it is today.
Like 1800 something.
Yeah, something like that. It doesn't matter. Gold has actually had a very good year. Wasn't so long ago, people were scared. Oh, is it going to go below 1,000 again? Look, I've been buying gold since it was $35 an ounce. I've never sold an ounce, and I have no plans on selling any. I like feeling like Uncle Scrooge, who incidentally is one of my favorite characters from literature. There's nothing like gold and silver coins. Just to have and play with the way kids play with Tinker Toys and building blocks and stuff like that. So look, gold is doing fine, and I think it's going to be reinstituted as the world's money, at least between governments, because in the relatively near future, you're going to find people like the Chinese and the Russians and everybody. They have to trade with US dollars between each other. That makes no sense at all. I mean, the US dollar is just a hot potato issued by a bankrupt government at this point. So but they don't trust each other's currencies either.
Right.
So they're going to go back to using gold. And, China is the world's largest gold producer. Most people are unaware of that. But it's also a huge gold importer. And no, gold is going to be a big deal again. It's going to go a lot higher. And what that's going to do to the earnings of producing gold companies, fund managers don't understand gold. All they know is what Warren Buffett said about gold. It's a pet rock. It's something they take out of the ground in Africa to put back in the ground in a vault. Makes no sense. I mean, look, he's a genius, but he doesn't actually understand economics. He really doesn't, even though he's a genius financially. So these gold mining companies, the ones that are producing, the ones that are in production, are going to be churning out giant amounts of earnings. And even though fund managers have been corrupted by going to college and MBA school and all this nonsense, and I think Buffett is right about gold, they won't be able to avoid the earnings, and they'll start buying it. And then they'll investigate it, and then there's going to be a panic into it in the public. And it's going to be like trying to put the contents of Hoover Dam through a garden hose. So these things are explosive, and they're cheap now. So that's my advice. To keep it simple, okay? Keep it simple. These people chasing after these tech stocks, these exotic technologies that almost nobody understands, and they're risky, and they're money burners, and it's a mania. That is not when you buy stocks in a mania. So sell your tech stocks, buy these gold stocks nobody's interested in, silver stocks.
How high do you think the price of gold and silver could go?
Well, they say there's about 6 billion ounces of gold that are above ground, that have basically been mined since the dawn of history. And new gold production is roughly, at the moment, about 80 million ounces a year. So the amount of gold in the world is growing by 1.33% per year, something like that. So how do we figure out what that gold is worth? There's 8 billion people in the world. If each of them had an equal amount of gold, it would be 3/4 of an ounce of gold apiece. Fun fact, okay? How high could it go? If gold is used as money, in order for it to be, it'd probably have to go to $10,000 an ounce. I mean, there's all kinds of variety. We can take the number of US dollars outside the US. We can take the number of US dollars and divide it into the number of ounces the US Treasury says it has. And you come up with crazy numbers when you do this type of thing. But the thing to remember is that it's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. And when these currencies start turning to toilet paper, and they all will, because all these stupid governments are printing up money by the boatload, same way the U.S. is. Yeah, I'm betting big that the world is going to go to gold, including these stupid governments, because they don't trust each other.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, real quick, before I get into a couple other questions, are you getting a position in uranium? Do you have one? Are you bullish, bearish? Are you putting much of your capital to work in uranium?
Yeah, I've been a fan of uranium because was always kind of a boy scientist, and I've always believed that uranium, nuclear power, that is to say. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll use thorium in the future. That might even be a better fuel, but that's a different subject. I think that nuclear power is certainly, by far, the safest, the cheapest, and the cleanest form of mass energy generation. And that will be recognized also in the future. Also, I might point out, unlike gold, which is very profitable to mine right now, uranium is not profitable to mine. There are very few uranium mines in the world that are in production that are making any money. But nuclear power plants, of which there are around 425 or something in the world today, and more being built all the time in advancing places in the world, like China and the Orient and even India. All this fuel, they need a lot of uranium to keep these things going. So supply and demand. The last bull market in uranium was back at around, at the turn of the century. And uranium at that point went from about $10 a pound up to about $140 a pound. So say it's $30 now. It'll go back up. And there are very few uranium stocks out there. There's one called Uranium Royalty Company, which I'm a large shareholder of, because it just takes royalties. It's easier than mining to collect a royalty. Yeah, there's going to be another mania in uranium stocks, just like there were the last time.
So are you buying? Are you buying right now the same way you're buying silver and gold, or not as much?
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. I've got a large position in all this stuff.
Got it.
And the only thing that I buy anymore is when a company's doing a financing and I can get a warrant, or when somebody I know is starting a new company and I know who they are and I know what I'm getting, then I'll buy it pre-public because you get it cheap. But you can buy this stuff out of the market too, but I've got kind of a full plate. So I'm kind of overloaded with these things right now. I think, but other people don't own them at all. You know.
No.
Hey, listen. If gold and silver collapses, and I'm wrong about this, it's not going to take. I'll be very unhappy because I hate to be wrong, but it's not going to take food off my plate at this point. But nobody owns these stocks, really. I mean, you might have a few listeners that own them because I know you've been talking about them, Jake, but the public doesn't own them. They don't even know they exist. I mean, the average young guy today doesn't think about businesses where you're basically playing in the dirt with big yellow trucks. I mean, it's a lot easier to just be on your laptop and, build a new app or something like that. So people don't think about mining, frankly. But all the stuff that we got in the world, if you want stuff, you got to mine it or you got to grow it. You got to do things like that. So I'm pretty positive about it. Even though governments, especially the governments that we have today all over the world, and Washington especially, hate mining because it's not green. This is another thing. I mean, the world is actually insane. We have crazy people running the world today. We really do. I think they're so severely psychologically aberrated that I could actually say that many of them are clinically insane.
I agree with you. Where I've really, what's made me really want to leave the country is I've always felt like that about government. I mean, is what led me to drop out and everything like that. And you and I fall in the same camp politically, but I've lost my trust in the intelligence and critical thinking of the population. And that's what's really, why you and I were talking off air. And so, I think that's where things get more dicey. But let me ask you, and first of all, if you were getting a call because you got to go, just tell me to shut up and, we'll end whenever you want.
I've got a couple more minutes, but unfortunately, that's all.
All right, cool. Well, so let me ask you then, what would you say are the top philosophies that changed your life? Whether they're financial philosophies that, you're a very wealthy, successful, free man. Were there any that, are important for me as a 29-year-old and my listeners that are trying to, be the next mini Doug Casey over this commodities run? What's important for us?
Well, let me recommend 4 books. I can think of them right now since you asked.
Cool.
I consider Ayn Rand's book, The Virtue of Selfishness, to be extraordinarily. It was so important I had to put it down after the first page because I couldn't believe somebody crystallized all these things. It's only about, 120 pages, short book. Okay. Virtue of Selfishness by Rand. Second, I think The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. This guy was a genius. He was a San Francisco longshoreman, but he was a real genius. Another short book, 125 pages, something like that. Get The True Believer. Third book, politically speaking, get The Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannehill. It's on the internet, free, if you look it up on Google. It's a work of genius. It explains exactly, actually, how a world without the state, without government, might work. So The Market for Liberty by Tannehill. And I'll give you a fourth one. It just went in my mind and went out of my mind just at this moment. Oh, I know. This is, I think, for basic economics, which most people don't have a clue about. Here's another short book, 125 pages, roughly. All these books are short. It's called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's a work of genius. Now, if all your readers would read those books, I promise they're going to be so thankful to you for having had a channel that made them aware of this. They should also read my novels, Speculator, Drug Lord, and Assassin. They're getting more radical. The next one's called Terrorist.
Yeah, pretty soon they're not going to let you sell these things.
No, very, very possible. I hope I get as far as the one after that, which is Warlord, where our hero goes back to Africa and becomes a warlord, showing that you can do all these outrageous, radical things and be a good guy.
Doug, last question here. So for everyone listening, we got the links to all Doug's books right there down below. International Man newsletter, which it really is a fantastic newsletter. I do really love reading it every day. So all those are down below.
And it's free.
And it's free, yeah, and it's good. It's really good writing. I do enjoy opening those and reading those every time. Last question, and then we'll let you get going. So
also, I've got a daily thing like what it's not quite daily. I do it with a friend of mine. It's called Doug Casey's Take on YouTube.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we'll put the YouTube link to that as well.
I figure it'll be deplatformed pretty soon. So.
All right. So, last question. So, looking at your life right now, I mean, you're this kind of iconic guy to a lot of commodities and gold investors, and to use blandly, you're an extremely successful guy, and you've done well in business and investing and all these things. If you were talking to yourself at 20 years old or 30 years old right now with what's happening in the world and everything you know about the world and everything you know about money and investing, what would you be telling yourself?
I would speed up what I did. Look, first of all, you got to get some capital together. You got to get a grub stake, okay? That's important. That may mean working for somebody else and, basically, saving almost everything that you get paid. You got to get that grub stake together. That's important. That gives you freedom. And then I'd say hit the road and do what Ted Turner said. You just go someplace where there's a lot of action, and eventually something bounces off to you. If you're young and trying to make your way upwards, where I am right now, Uruguay, in the middle of nowhere, it's not a place to be. There's no action here. This is a place you go when you've already got a way to make some money, not when you're trying to make money. That's why this is a poor country. Nobody makes any money for all kinds of reasons we could talk about. But I would get your grub stake together and go someplace where you're different and special. That's why I always suggest Africa today more than any other place. That's what the first novel, Speculator, is about. Because if you're a young American and you go there, you're different. You got knowledge and experience and connections and sources of capital and all kinds of things those locals don't have. And that makes you interesting to them because you're so different. And that gives you opportunity. And you'll find stuff, I promise you. So that would be my advice in a nutshell. Don't have to be so radical. Don't jump off into the deep end, into Nigeria. But, go to Namibia, which is pretty mellow to start with, and kind of groove in from there.
All right, amen. All right, cool, Doug. Really, truly appreciate your time as always. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you in person here in a few months and checking out your property and checking out the vibe down there. Sincerely appreciate you and everything you do. And every time I look out at what's happening in the world right now, it makes me think maybe Doug's more right than people give him credit for. And so happy to be on this journey with you. We appreciate your time. I want to encourage all the listeners to go ahead and read Doug's books. They're entertaining as well, so it's a fun way to get your mind off things. And also Speculators. It's a good inspirational book too. It makes you imagine possibilities and all that good stuff. So make sure you hit the like button on either side. Doug says maybe he thinks one day we'll get $10,000 gold. Let us know your personal long-term gold price prediction in the comments right there down below. And thank you for joining, Doug.
Thank you, Jack. Pleasure talking to you.